Alright, welcome back to another video. In this update, I'll share how I turned what was supposed to be a small graphical change into an entirely new fire system. Originally, my goal was just to create a new stylized fire effect. I wanted a new flame that looked like it actually matched the world of Wilden, instead of feeling like a generic particle effect that I just dropped into the game. But, as usual, one small thing turns into another, and I somehow ended up creating a much bigger system where fire reacts to the world, affects the player, interacts with the weather, and can even spread to nearby flammable objects. So it all started from working on this new fire Niagara effect. Previously, I just had a generic flame sprite. It did the job as a placeholder, but it didn't really match the visual style that I'm aiming for. I've got a much more stylized look, so I wanted the fire to feel chunkier and more physical, and I guess also a little bit more playful. Essentially, the idea I ended up going with was to use mesh renderers with just simple cubes. On their own, the cubes are very simple, but I layered them across several emitters with different speeds, sizes, colors, and movement patterns, and they started to create this more stylized 3D flame effect. It's not at all meant to be realistic fire. I really wanted to avoid that, but I wanted something that looked readable from a distance, something that matched the world and felt like it belonged with the rest of the game's art style. Once the fire effect started to look decent, I also wanted to improve how the light it provides works as well. Every fire now has a strength attribute, and that strength affects both the light and the heat that the fire gives off. So a weak fire won't light up as much of the area, and it also won't warm the player as effectively, whereas a stronger fire gives off more light, feels more useful, and has a bigger impact on the surrounding area. This helps make the fire feel less like a static object, and more like something that has a current state. It can be weak, strong, growing, dying out, or affected by what's happening around it. The lighting also makes a big difference at night. A campfire becomes this sort of little safe point in the darkness. It gives the player somewhere to gather, somewhere to rest, and somewhere that feels a bit safer than being out in the open. I also created some new player interactions around the fire. The character can now sit on the ground anywhere, and if they sit near a campfire that's warm enough, they'll put their hands out to warm up. And this also works if the character's just standing near the fire and facing it. So rather than the player just standing beside a particle effect, they actually react to the fire and look like they're using it. Another benefit of fires and their warmth is helping to dry the player. If the character's gotten wet from the rain or from swimming, then standing near a warm fire will help them dry out more quickly. This ties the fire into the player's survival state a bit more, so it's not just there for light and it's not just there for decoration. It becomes something that the player actually wants to use after being out in the bad weather or travelling through water. And just like the player, fires can get wet too, so if a fire is too wet, you won't be able to light it, and if it's already lit and it becomes too wet, then it'll slowly get put out. Here I've just got an example of a protected fire and a fire that's out in the open. As you can see, the protected fire isn't being affected by the rain or the wind, and that's because it's got the shelter above it, whereas the unprotected fire is exposed to the weather and it's slowly getting extinguished. I really like this because it gives shelter more of a practical gameplay purpose as well. A roof over your fire isn't just cosmetic, it actually matters. If you want to keep your fire burning through the rain, you need to think about where you're going to place it and how it's going to be protected. I really want to build more of that survival interaction into the game, not just separate mechanics that exist on their own, but systems that sort of connect together naturally. Another example of that is the fire and wind. Fire can also spread to nearby flammable things, and that spread is also affected by the wind. Here the wind is blowing towards the left of the screen, and we can see that the fire is being pushed mostly in that direction. The spread system uses the fire's strength, nearby flammable objects, and the wind direction to decide where fire is most likely to spread. I'm not trying to make a perfect fire simulation, and I don't want the system to be overly complicated or impossible to understand. It's mostly just about making the fire feel believable and readable. So if a fire is strong, it's more dangerous, and if something is nearby flammable, then maybe it can catch. And if the wind is blowing towards that object, then the chance of fire spreading in that direction is even higher. That gives the player something to think about when building. Fire is useful, but it can also become dangerous if you build carelessly or place it too close to flammable structures. I like the balance. A campfire should feel helpful. It gives light, warmth and comfort, place to dry off, but it should also feel like a real thing in the world. And if you ignore the conditions around it or place it badly, then it can become a problem. This is also why I'm pretty excited about where the system can go from here. There's a lot of things I still want to improve. I want to add better smoke behavior so that enclosed spaces become dangerous if they don't have ventilation. I want to improve the burning visuals a bit so objects look scorched or damaged as they burn. And I'd also like to add better ember effects, better extinguishing behavior, and eventually tools for the player to help manage fire properly. So maybe you could throw water on something, smother a fire, clear flammable objects, or build with safer materials. But even at this stage, I'm really happy with how much the system adds to the game. What started as a simple visual upgrade has turned into something that helps connect a lot of the other systems together. Fire affects light, it affects temperature, helps dry the player. The weather affects fire, shelter protects fire, wind affects fire, and flammable objects create risk. And some of the new player animations just help it make it feel a bit more grounded. That's exactly the kind of survival gameplay I'm trying to build, systems that interact with each other and create little stories naturally as you play. So that's the fire update. This started as me just wanting a better looking flame and somehow turned into light, heat, drying, rain, shelter, wind, fire spreading, flammable buildings and player animations, which is kind of what I love about working on this game. One small feature can suddenly become a whole new system that connects everything else. There's still a lot to tune and improve, but I'm really happy with where it's heading. Next, I want to push this further with better smoke, burning damage, scorched materials, and more ways for the player to manage fire when things go wrong. But for now, fire already feels much more like a real part of the world. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next update.